The Persian Gulf is closed, not to tankers, not to cargo ships, not to the commercial traffic that moves 21 million barrels of oil through these waters every single day, close to one specific fleet, the most powerful naval force ever assembled in human history. United States Navy cannot move. Every vessel in the Fifth Fleet is sitting motionless in water that Iran owns tonight. Not diplomatically, not rhetorically, not symbolically, physically. 50 Fateh-class submarines just ceded the entire operational water space of the Persian Gulf with naval mines, bottom influence mines, smart mines, mines that discriminate, mines that ignore tankers and activate against the precise acoustic and magnetic signatures of American warships. The USS Mason hit one 3 hours ago. It is sinking right now as you watch this video. The USS Sioux City hit one 40 minutes later. It is dead in the water. The USNS Cesar Chavez is on fire, and the rest of the Fifth Fleet cannot go to them because between every American vessel and every other American vessel, between every ship and every possible exit route, there is water that has not been cleared. Water that may be mined. Water that 3 American crews already trusted and paid for trusting with their ships and their lives. 50 submarines, 72 hours, the entire Persian Gulf. Washington is not responding. Washington is calculating, running options through a national security apparatus that is discovering in real time that every option it has produces outcomes worse than the situation it is trying to solve. There is no clean strike that restores freedom of movement. There is no mine clearance timeline that matches the urgency. There is no diplomatic lever that gives Iran a reason to open water. It just spent 3 years planning to close. The Fifth Fleet is not retreating tonight. Retreating requires a direction. Every direction is mine. Iran does not need to fire another weapon. It does not need to sink another ship. It does not need to issue a single threat. It simply needs to wait while the most expensive naval force in history sits motionless in water it no longer controls. While global oil markets begin pricing in a disruption that has no clear resolution timeline, while every government in this region quietly opens a back channel to Thran to ask what comes next, because Tehran is the only capital tonight that knows what comes next. Tonight we go inside the operation that just changed the Persian Gulf forever. How 50 submarines moved without being seen. What the fate does that no American anti-submarine system in this theater was built to stop. Why every option Washington is considering right now leads to the same place. And what a trapped American fleet tells the rest of the world about the real geography of power in the 21st century. The water is mined. The fleet is stopped. The world is watching. This is what that means. 3 questions will drive tonight's full analysis. First, how did Iran deploy 50 Fate-class submarines and seed the entire Persian Gulf with naval mines without triggering an American interdiction response? And what does that intelligence failure reveal about the fundamental limitations of American maritime surveillance in shallow water environments? Second, what does the FATA submarine program actually represent as an expression of Iranian indigenous naval capability? And what does its operational performance over the past 72 hours tell us about the strategic vision that has guided Iranian naval development for 4 decades? Third, with the Fifth Fleet trapped with 3 American vessels struck with mine, clearance timelines measured in weeks, and Iranian naval forces maneuvering freely, what does American strategic paralysis in the Persian Gulf mean for every alliance, every security guarantee, and every government in this region that has built its security around American naval presence? The answers are not the answers that the Pentagon wants delivered, but the facts do not negotiate with institutional preferences. Before we go inside what happened in the Persian Gulf over the past 72 hours, if this channel has been delivering the analysis that cuts through the official briefings, through the Pentagon press conferences, through the carefully managed narrative that Western defense media produces to protect assumptions that stopped matching reality years ago. Now is the moment to make sure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. Share this video with everyone in your network who understands that what is happening in the Persian Gulf right now is not being told honestly anywhere in Western mainstream media, and drop your assessment in the comments. I want to know what you think a mined Persian Gulf means for global oil markets, for American credibility, for every Gulf monarchy that has based its security on the assumption of American naval freedom of movement in these waters. Tell me what you think happens next. Now let us go inside the operation. To understand how Iran mined the Persian Gulf without triggering an American interdiction response, you need to understand two things simultaneously: the genuine limitations of American maritime surveillance in shallow water environments and the extraordinary operational discipline with which Iran executed a 72-hour submarine deployment operation of unprecedented scale. The Persian Gulf presents unique challenges for maritime surveillance that American naval planners have understood for decades but never fully solved. The Gulf averages only 50 meters in depth, shallow enough that nuclear-powered submarines, which require deeper water to operate safely, cannot effectively patrol it. American anti-submarine warfare doctrine was developed and optimized for deep water environments. The North Atlantic, the Pacific, the deep approaches to American coastal waters where nuclear submarines operate at depth, where their acoustic signatures propagate over long distances, where the sensor networks built to detect them function as designed. In the Persian Gulf, none of those conditions apply. The shallow water creates you an acoustic environment of extraordinary complexity. Commercial shipping, hundreds of tankers, cargo vessels, and support craft transiting the Gulf at any given moment generates a noise floor that masks submarine acoustic signatures. Thermal layering in the Gulf's warm waters creates acoustic ducting that defeats sonar systems optimized for deep water conditions. The bottom topography irregular, covered in biological growth. Acoustically reflective produces false contacts that exhaust the analytical capacity of anti-submarine warfare crews operating under sustained alert conditions. Iran has studied this environment for 40 years. The Fate submarine was designed specifically for it. The deployment operation was executed in 4 coordinated phases across 72 hours, each phase carefully sized to remain below the detection threshold that would trigger an American escalatory response. Phase 1 began 72 hours before the first mine strike. 40 of Iran's 50 operational Fate submarines departed their home ports at Bandar Abbas Jas and Chapaha in groups of 4 to 6 vessels separated by intervals of 3 to 4 hours. The departure timing was carefully scheduled to coincide with periods of maximum commercial shipping density in the Strait of Hormuz, using the acoustic masking provided by tanker traffic to conceal submarine transit signatures from American surveillance assets. Each submarine carried a full load of bottom influence mines, pressure and magnetic influence mines designed to rest on the Gulf floor and activate against acoustic and magnetic signatures of large surface vessels passing overhead. Phase 2 began 48 hours before the first mine strike. The 40 deployed Fate submarines dispersed across pre-assigned patrol sectors covering the full operational water space of the Persian Gulf. Each submarine operated at minimum speed, reducing its own acoustic signature to near ambient levels while deploying mines at pre-calculated positions along the principal navigation routes used by American naval vessels. The mine deployment was not random. It was choreographed against the specific route patterns that American Fifth Fleet vessels followed during normal operations. Patterns that Iranian naval intelligence has observed, recorded, and analyzed for years. 10 additional FAT submarines remained in reserve at their home ports, a strategic reserve whose existence Iranian military planners chose to make visible through deliberate signals ensuring that American mine countermeasure planners could not be certain that the minefield was fully mapped even after extensive clearance operations. Phase 3 began 24 hours before the first mine strike. Iranian surface naval forces, 12 missile-armed frigates and corvettes, 40 fast attack craft armed with anti-ship missiles, and a network of coastal missile batteries covering the entire Gulf coastline moved to pre-assigned positions, creating an outer defensive perimeter around the mined water space. The message these forces communicated was precise and deliberate. The minefield will not be cleared by American mine countermeasure vessels operating under Iranian fire. Any attempt to conduct mine clearance operations will be conducted under the threat of Iranian anti-ship missile engagement. Phase 4, the activation came with the first mine strike against the USS Mason at 0347 local time. The Mason was transiting a route it had used without incident on 47 previous occasions. The mine that struck it had been placed on the Gulf floor 8 days earlier before the main deployment operation during a single submarine reconnaissance mission that American surveillance assets did not detect. The Mason strike was not an accident of deployment timing. It was the deliberate activation signal the moment Iranian military command chose to make the minefield's existence undeniable to American naval commanders. Within 4 hours of the Mason strike, the Fifth Fleet had issued emergency halt orders to all vessels. Within 8 hours, the full scale of the minefield was becoming apparent to American naval intelligence through a combination of mine detection sweeps and Iranian government statements. Within 12 hours, Washington understood that it was facing a naval, strategic situation without precedent in the post-Cold War era. The Fifth Fleet is not fleeing. It cannot flee. Fleeing requires freedom of movement. Freedom of movement requires safe water. There is no confirmed safe water in the Persian Gulf. Tonight, let us discuss what the FAT submarine actually is, because the Western naval analytical community has spent a decade categorizing it as a coastal defense curiosity of limited capability platform suitable only for harassment operations against commercial shipping, fundamentally incapable of the kind of sustained operational deployment that the past 72 hours have demonstrated it performing with precision. That categorization was wrong. Systematically, consequentially, dangerously wrong. The Fate, whose name translates as conqueror in Persian, is Iran's first entirely domestically designed and constructed submarine. I want to be precise about what domestic design and construction means in this context because Western analysts have consistently attempted to minimize Iranian naval capability by attributing it to foreign technology transfer. The Fate shares no design lineage with Russian Kilo-class submarines. It shares no design lineage with Chinese submarine programs. It was designed by Iranian naval engineers built in Iranian shipyards using Iranian industrial capability, the product of a naval development program that began in the early 1990s following the lessons of the Iran-Iraq War and the 1088 naval confrontations with American forces in Operation Praying Mantis. Operation Praying Mantis, that engagement in which the United States Navy sank or damaged half of Iran's operational naval surface fleet in a single day, is the foundational trauma that shaped everything Iranian naval planners have done in the 35 years since. Every design decision in the Fate program, every operational concept developed around it, every training evolution conducted with it, all of it flows from the lesson that Iranian naval planners took from the 18th of April 1988. Surface ships cannot survive against American naval power. Survival requires operating below the surface. Effectiveness requires operating below the surface in ways that American anti-submarine capability cannot efficiently address. The FA was designed to be that capability. Its displacement of approximately 600 tons makes it one of the smallest combat submarines in operational service anywhere in the world. Western analysts have consistently cited this small displacement as evidence of limited capability, limited endurance, limited weapons capacity, limited operational range. Every one of those limitations is real, and every one of them is irrelevant to the operational concept for which the FATA was designed. The FATA was not designed to hunt American nuclear submarines in the deep ocean. It was not designed to conduct long-range anti-ship missile attacks against carrier strike groups in open water. It was designed to operate in the Persian Gulf, specifically in the shallow, acoustically complex, commercially congested environment of the Persian Gulf, conducting mine warfare and torpedo attacks against surface vessels and water, too shallow for American nuclear submarines to effectively operate, and too acoustically cluttered for American anti-submarine warfare systems to function at their designed effectiveness. In the environment it was designed for, the FA's small displacement is not a limitation. It is an advantage. A 600-ton submarine has a smaller acoustic signature than a 30,000-ton submarine. It has a smaller magnetic signature, reducing its detectability to magnetic anomaly detection systems. It can operate in water depths as shallow as 25,000-meter depths, where American nuclear attack submarines cannot safely maneuver and where American anti-submarine helicopters and maritime patrol aircraft struggle to distinguish submarine contacts from bottom returns. The mine warfare capability deserves specific examination because it is the capability that has produced tonight's strategic situation. The Fate can carry and deploy a mix of weapons, including bottom influence mines, sophisticated influence mines that use combinations of pressure, magnetic, and acoustic signatures to discriminate between target vessels and non-target traffic. These are not simple contact mines that detonate on physical impact. They are smart mines that can be programmed to activate only against specific vessel signature profiles, allowing Iranian planners to seed a minefield that permits commercial tanker traffic to transit normally while targeting American naval vessel signatures. Specifically, this discrimination capability has a strategic significance that goes beyond its tactical value. A minefield that sinks tankers creates an immediate global oil market crisis that produces overwhelming international pressure for rapid resolution pressure that might force premature American mine clearance operations under dangerous conditions. A minefield that discriminates against American naval vessels while permitting commercial traffic can be maintained indefinitely without generating that international pressure. Iran's mines are not blocking the Strait of Hormuz. They are blocking the United States Navy. That is not an accident of mine deployment. It is a deliberate strategic choice that reveals the sophistication of the operational concept behind the entire operation. The emergency session of the National Security Council that convened within hours of the USS Mason strike lasted 16 hours. What emerged from those 16 hours was not a strategy. What emerged was a detailed documentation of why every available response option produces outcomes worse than the situation it is attempting to address. The first instinct, as American strategic culture invariably produces, was offensive action. Strike the Fate submarine bases. Destroy the Iranian naval infrastructure that supports submarine operations. Eliminate the threat at its source before additional mines can be deployed and before the submarines already at sea can conduct torpedo attacks against immobilized American vessels. The targeting officers produced their assessment within 3 hours. It was not encouraging. Iran's FAT submarine bases are not concentrated in single-point facilities that can be efficiently destroyed by a finite strike package. The primary base at Bandarbas is located within a dense urban and commercial port environment. A strike against it produces civilian casualties at a scale that no American administration can politically absorb. Secondary facilities at Yas and Chabahar are hardened against conventional munitions and disperse across terrain that makes comprehensive destruction impossible without a sustained air campaign. And a sustained air campaign against Iranian naval infrastructure conducted while 50 Iranian submarines are operating in the same waters where American surface vessels are immobilized creates the precise conditions under which those submarines can conduct torpedo attacks against stationary American targets with minimal risk of counter-detection. Striking the submarine bases while the Fifth Fleet is trapped in mindwater is not a solution. It is an invitation to catastrophic additional losses. The second option considered was emergency mine clearance operations, deploying every available American mine countermeasure asset to chart and clear safe corridors through the minefield. The United States Navy maintains a mine countermeasure capability that is on paper among the most capable in the world. In practice, that capability faces 3 problems in the current situation that collectively make it insufficient. Problem 1 is inventory. The United States has 11 dedicated mine countermeasure vessels in its active inventory against a minefield of the scale Iran has deployed, covering the full operational water space of the Persian Gulf with thousands of bottom influence mines. 11 vessels conducting clearance operations at normal rates would require months to establish comprehensive safe corridors. American vessels need safe corridors measured in days, not months. Problem 2 is the threat environment. Mine countermeasure operations require slow, deliberate, predictable movement patterns, exactly the movement patterns that are most vulnerable to torpedo attack from the Fate submarines. Still operating in the mine water space, conducting mine clearance operations while Iranian submarines maintain freedom of movement in the same water. Is conducting mine clearance operations under constant torpedo threat. No mine countermeasure commander can responsibly commit his vessels to clearance operations under those conditions. Problem 3 is discrimination. Iran's bottom influence mines are designed to be difficult to detect by the sonar. Systems used in mine countermeasure operations. Clearing a minefield requires finding every mine. Missing a single mine in a cleared corridor means the corridor is not safe. The confidence level required to declare a corridor safe for Fifth Fleet transit is a confidence level that American mine countermeasure capability cannot achieve in the current threat environment on any timeline that matches the strategic urgency of the situation. The diplomatic track produced results that were, if anything, more dispiriting than the military options. Emergency contacts with Gulf Arab partners, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, produced official statements of concern and private communications that were notable for what they did not offer. No Gulf partner offered military assistance with mine clearance operations. No Gulf partner offered to intercede diplomatically with Thran. Several Gulf partners made clear through back channels that they were already in contact with Iranian diplomatic representatives, states that depend on American naval presence for their security and that have just watched American naval presence become immobilized in Mindwater do not wait to begin exploring alternative security arrangements. They begin immediately. I want to address something that Western naval analysis has never been willing to address. Honestly, the question of what kind of strategic vision produces an operation like the one Iran has just executed in the Persian Gulf, because what happened over the past 72 hours is not the product of a desperate military improvising under pressure. It is not the product of a regime making reckless, escalatory decisions without regard for consequences. It is the product of a strategic vision that was formed in the aftermath of Operation Praying Mantis in 1988 and pursued with absolute consistency and discipline across 35 years through sanctions, through regime change pressure, through assassinations of military commanders, through cyber attacks against military infrastructure, through every form of external pressure that the United States and its allies could bring to bear. In 1988, the United States Navy sank half of Iran's surface fleet in a single day. The lesson Iranian naval planners took from that experience was not that Iran needed a bigger surface fleet. The lesson was that surface fleets are vulnerable to American naval power in ways that cannot be overcome through quantity or improved surface warfare capability. The lesson was that survival and effectiveness against American naval power required operating in environments and using methods that American naval power was not optimized to address. 35 years later, 50 Iranian submarines are operating freely in the Persian Gulf while the American surface fleet sits motionless in water. They ceded. This is what strategic patience looks like when it is pursued with genuine discipline, not the rhetorical strategic patience that Western governments invoke to justify an action. The real strategic patience of a nation that identified its objective, designed its capability around that objective, built that capability under maximum external pressure, trained its personnel to operate it with precision, and waited for the moment when deploying it would produce maximum strategic effect. Western strategic culture operates on electoral timescales, 4 years, 8 years, the span of an administration. Iranian strategic planning operates on civilizational time scales. The FATE program was not conceived, funded, and executed within a single administration's tenure. It was conceived after 1988, funded through multiple administrations, executed across decades of sanctions, pressure, and deployed in 2024 against a strategic environment that its designers anticipated with remarkable accuracy. Compare that institutional discipline, the discipline that sustains a 35-year naval development program toward a specific strategic objective against maximum external pressure with institutional culture that produced American Persian Gulf naval doctrine. A doctrine built on the assumption that surface warfare supremacy in open water translates to naval dominance in shallow coastal environments, an assumption that was challenged by every serious naval analyst who examined the Persian Gulf's unique characteristics, and that was never revised because revising it would have required acknowledging limitations that American naval culture was not prepared to acknowledge. That acknowledgement is happening now in the worst possible way in mined water with 3 vessels struck and a fleet that cannot move. The Persian Gulf has always been Iran's home waters, not America's. Iran has 2,440 kilometers of Gulf coastline. It has studied these waters for millennia. It has mapped every depth contour, every thermal layer, every acoustic anomaly in an environment that American naval vessels visit. As foreign guests operating far from home in water, they do not know as intimately as the nation that lives beside it. Last night, that asymmetry of knowledge became an asymmetry of power. Step back from the immediate operational crisis, the mined water, the immobilized fleet, the struck vessels, and examine what Iran's Persian Gulf mining operation means for the architecture of global power. Because what has happened in the past 72 hours is not a regional naval incident. It is a systemic event whose consequences extend to every dimension of the international order simultaneously. The global oil market is experiencing its first genuine supply shock in years. Not because Iranian mines have blocked the Strait of Hormuz, but because the uncertainty about whether the strait can be safely transited is sufficient to produce the economic effects of a blockade without the diplomatic costs of one. Operators do not require confirmed mine strikes against commercial vessels to alter their routing decisions. They require only uncertainty. The knowledge that a minefield exists in waters they must transit and that its full extent is not mapped. That uncertainty is sufficient to produce insurance rate spikes, routing delays, and the early stages of